Former Attorney General Bill Barr hit the shows, had a lot to say about the new Trump indictment, the one taking place out of Florida, and it's capturing a lot of attention. And Bill Barr came on right after Alina Abba, which is Donald Trump's former or current lawyer, on a number of different issues. But Bill Barr is next, and Bill Barr gives us a breakdown on his take. And as we've talked about with Bill Barr, remember he used to work for Donald Trump, resigned before the end of Trump's term, has been a DOJ for a long time, and we call him here an institutionalist. Somebody who will do anything to defend the institution, really against any side. You know, I see him as more of a defender of the DOJ more than a Republican or a Democrat. Somebody who wants the institution to survive against attacks from either side. And here is what he said discussing the Trump indictment.
Mr. Attorney General, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Good to have you. What about this chief argument that comes up for the president's allies and his legal team that this should have been handled under the Presidential Records Act, not this Espionage Act charge and other federal statutes that were used here?
Well, it started out under the Presidential Records Act and the archives trying to retrieve documents that Trump had no right to have. But it quickly became clear that what the government was really worried about were these classified and very sensitive documents. I was shocked by the degree of sensitivity of these documents and how many there were, frankly.
Do you know what they are? Did you just read the indictment? You just read the indictment and you were able to tell exactly what they were? That's pretty amazing, because we read the indictment, man, we couldn't see much of the details here because they really didn't tell us many details. I mean, they told us some natures of here's the list when we get down to all the counts. I mean, we read through this in good detail last week, but I mean, there's not a lot of details here. And what's also curious about what Bill Barr said is this little fact too, is that he says it started out as something that was not criminal. But see these dates here, January 20th, that's when Trump left the office. So the date of the offense started, they're saying they're relating it all the way back to the day that he left. So they're saying he committed the crimes on the day that he left, not the day that they requested the documents back. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to say it's kind of like a grace period, and they're going to relate it back to he took it. They would have not charged him. So basically, in other words, he should not have taken this at all, is what he's saying, at all. Nothing should have left the premises since January 20th. And then when he returned some documents, that was the end of the criminality. Everything else went back August 8th. But that one went back earlier, right? Yeah, I think that's interesting too. Look at this one. These all went back a little earlier. So the criminality stopped when the documents went back. So it basically was criminal from the moment that he took the documents. So the Presidential Records Act, I'm not seeing how that was. If it was criminal for day one, then the Presidential Records Act was never in consideration, right? Because the Presidential Records Act would have made it civil, is how I believe this is going to play out. But let's see.
And so the government's agenda was to get those protect those documents and get them out. And I think it was perfectly appropriate to do that. It was the right thing to do. And I think the counts under the Espionage Act that he willfully retained those documents are solid counts. Now, I do think we have to wait and see what the defense says and what proves to be true. But I do think that even half of what Andy McCarthy said, which is if even half of it is true, then he's toast. I mean, it's a very detailed indictment, and it's very, very damning. And this idea of presenting Trump as a victim here, a victim of a witch hunt, is ridiculous. Yes, he's been a victim in the past. Yes, his adversaries have obsessively pursued him with phony claims. And I've been at his side defending against them when he is a victim. But this is much different. He's not a victim here.
Okay. All right. So he's been a victim for the last, 8 years, 7 years at least. But this one, though, is different, though. This one is different. You know, it's there's better people in charge. And Trump actually did a bad thing this time. So does he hear himself talk? He just told us that all of the DOJ, FBI prosecutions over the last era were problematic, and he stood by his side, but not on this one. Those agencies suddenly now are not partisan anymore. Now everything is legitimate.
He was totally wrong that he had the right to have those documents. Those documents are among the most sensitive secrets that the country has. They have to be in the custody of the archivist. He had no right to maintain them and retain them. And he kept them in a way at Mar-a-Lago that anyone who really cares about national security their stomach would churn at it.
So you see this as different and separate from what he would term the Russian hoax, what we saw from the Durham report, you see these as two totally separate tracks.
Yes, because...
Yeah, totally. The corrupt FBI and DOJ that was behind Crossfire Hurricane and the Russian collusion hoax and basically everything else is legitimate in this instance. Strange.
There was nothing. There was no problem or issue underlying the Russiagate claim. It was an effort to knock him out with a false claim.
Yeah.
Here, I think the government did responsibly. They gave him every opportunity to return those documents. They acted with restraint. They were very deferential to him, and they were very patient. They talked to him for almost a year to try to get those documents, and he jerked them around. They finally went to a subpoena.
I guess you should have used a hammer and smashed them to bits.
And what did he do? According to the government, he lied and obstructed that subpoena.
So did Hillary.
And then they did a search.
Oh, they didn't issue a subpoena for Hillary, right?
And they found a lot more documents. And they're not even, I don't think they're even sure now whether they have everything. So they acted in a very patient way. And what they were met with was, according to the government and the indictment, very egregious obstruction.
Let me ask you this and clarify, because the Justice Department has wanted to say over and over again, this is not something Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, was involved in. This is the special counsel, Jack Smith, has complete autonomy, makes these own decisions. But in a case of this import and with a special counsel statute, would this have to go to the Attorney General for some kind of review or decision-making process before this indictment happens and goes public?
Well, under the regulation, the call can be made just by the special counsel, but I'm sure they had worked out an agreement whereby he would keep the Attorney General in the loop, and if the Attorney General had strong feelings, he'd voice them. But I think the Attorney General...
Of course, it would be asinine to not have that happen. Are you kidding me? And the fact that Joe Biden is not aware of this is also lunacy. That is just nuts. He keeps saying, well, I have no idea what Merrick Garland's doing. I don't talk to my DOJ. And you go, wait a minute. The DOJ's in your cabinet, Joe Biden. Do you remember that? Do you know that? The DOJ is an important part of your executive branch and your government. You should probably know what they're doing. Do you read the news? Do you know that Trump, your political opponent, is being prosecuted? And the idea that the Justice Department and all of this is now above board is nuts. This is what's called the Gell-Mann amnesia effect. This is something we've talked about here before. But the Gell-Mann amnesia effect, the example of how this works, let's say you open up a newspaper. I happen to be a lawyer. I know more about the law than I know more about farming, for example. So if I open up the New York Times and I read an article about law, I can say, this is nonsense. This person doesn't know anything about the law. This is just a journalist who's trying to pretend like they know the law, and this is fake, right? This is garbage journalism. But the Gell-Mann amnesia effect says that I'm going to forget all about the trash periodical that I'm reading, the trash newspaper. As soon as I flip the page, I'm going to have amnesia because I'm going to see another article about farming. And I'm going to say, wow, gosh, I had no idea that we had a water shortage in this area. And this sounds like a very big problem. And all of a sudden, I'm an expert in farming, even though I know that the same article, the same newspaper is mostly trash. Why? Because in my domain, I knew that it was inaccurate. But suddenly when I exit my domain, I suddenly now think that the rest of the article is legitimate. So the same thing is happening with Bill Barr here. He's having amnesia. He's flipping the page. Crossfire Hurricane, well, that's gone. And we've got all of the other collusion allegations. That's gone. We've got all of the cover-ups in 2020. Oh, that's gone. Flip that page. Amnesia, 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 amnesia. Forgets about it. Now suddenly, well, special counsel, Merrick Garland, Joe Biden, the whole corrupt institution that he's been a part of for his whole life, he's now going to come out and defend and just have amnesia about all of the other history of offense and presume that these institutions are operating in good faith. They don't deserve the good faith belief anymore.
General said pretty early on he would be guided by the recommendation of the counsel. Now, we can't forget here that this entire thing came about because of reckless conduct of the president. If he had just turned over the documents, which I think every other person in the country would have done, they're the government's documents, they're official records, they're not his personal records. Battle plans for an attack on another country or Defense Department documents about our capabilities are in no universe Donald J. Trump's personal documents. They are the government's documents.
What about
Have we seen that with other presidents? Does Bill Barr know what other personal records other presidents have seized? Who gets to make that decision, Bill? Who gets to decide what is a presidential record or a personal record? Do you know that one? Because the DC Circuit Court judge called Amy Berman, she said the presidents do. Again, when these guys come out, and honestly, in many instances, I like Bill Barr. I think that he's, an interesting commentator, and I like his takes on it. But I think he's an institutionalist through and through. And when they come out and they tell us that it's all this way or nothing else, you go, wait a minute, Bill, are you saying the DOJ has somebody who's more powerful than the president, who's in charge of policy there? Who is that person? I'd love to know, because I don't know who that is. What I was taught was that the president is the chief executive. He is the leader of the executive branch. And so anything that is underneath that policy is at the behest of the president. And Bill Barr knows very clearly that this is a case of first impression, that this has not happened before in this country. And so for him to come out here and bark at all of us like, well, I'm the Attorney General and I used to work there, so I can speak with moral authority about this, that nobody should have any of this stuff, it's ridiculous. It's a case of first impression. There's no comparisons here that we can give to what Hillary had. Can we compare it to what Hillary had and deleted and sent emails about? Can we compare and contrast it to that? No, because she deleted them. So it is a double standard. Trump is being victimized. This is the same DOJ and FBI as all of the other efforts. Nothing has changed here, but they want to come out and sell it to us like this is all just regular routine and Trump is just an ordinary criminal being pushed through.
The arguments, they'll say, okay, when it came to President Obama leaving, or, President Biden was vice president when some of these documents allegedly that he's got, that's a different question. But when you think about somebody like President Obama or President Clinton, the sock drawer case with President Clinton, they'll point to these and say, listen,
so there are
other
two big lies, I think, that are out there right now. One is, these other presidents took all these documents. Those were situations where they arranged with the archives to set up special space under the management, control, and security provided by the archivist to temporarily put documents until the libraries were ready. These were not people just putting them in their basement.
Wait a minute. He's talking about presidents. We're talking about Hillary, who's a presidential candidate. She did have a server in her basement, Bill.
Okay. And the second thing that the president, this idea that the president has complete authority to declare any document personal is obvious. It's facially ridiculous. That opinion had to do with the distinction between official records, which are records prepared by government agencies for the purpose of government action, and personal documents as opposed to official documents, which are things prepared by the president, such as a diary or notes, which are not used in the government's deliberation. And yes, as to the second class, stuff that the president himself generates, the president has some discretion. But these are official documents. It's inarguable. The president's daily brief.
I guess you can't declassify official documents, is what he's saying, which is really news to me. I didn't realize that.
Provided by the intelligence community is not Donald J. Trump's personal document, period.
I'm guessing that you're not going to join his legal team, as he's now putting together a new legal team.
Well,
do you still talk to the president? Like, how is he going to feel about your public take on this case?
He was not happy about it.
Well, he's been angry with me for a while, but I defend the president on Russiagate. I stood up and called out Alvin Bragg's politicized hit job, and I have spoken out for 30 years about the abuse of the criminal justice process to influence politics. But this is simply not true. This particular episode of...
It's amazing. It's amazing, the cognitive dissonance. Every single other assault against Donald Trump has been garbage, right? And all vindicated. All of it's been he's been trashed by the intelligence agencies and the DOJ for years, except this one, though.
Trying to retrieve those documents, the government acted responsibly, and it was Donald J. Trump who acted irresponsibly.
That's the FD 1023. The FD 1023, of course, came out and was released to Congress by the FBI the same day that they indicted Donald Trump, more or less, or same 48-hour window. So nice little cover up there. As the FD 1023 form drops, they also indict Trump. I think that timing was very intentional, and it worked. But now we can also see that the Senate GOP leaders are breaking with the House GOP. They want to see Trump locked up. Of course they do. Cocaine Mitch is out in front. Says leaders like McConnell are staying quiet about former President Trump's indictment. letting him twist in the wind and breaking with House Republican leaders who've come to Trump's defense. McConnell, who's careful not to comment on Trump or even repeat his name in public, what a weenie, has said to GOP colleagues that he wants his party to turn the page on the former president, whom he sees as a flawed general election candidate and a drag on Senate Republicans. The Senate GOP's leaders, top deputies, Republican Whip John Thune and John Cornyn, have also indicated they don't want Trump to win the party's presidential nomination. They, along with McConnell, are letting Trump's legal troubles unfold without coming to the former president's defense. Others in the House have come to his defense. We already read last week about Mitt Romney, and Mitt Romney is saying that the Justice Department is legitimate. And so you can see lines are being drawn. People are picking their sides as the prosecution continues.